million Soviet civilians who fled eastwards to the Soviet interior. 1.6 million were Jews. 156. 119. Local inhabitants killed as many as 50,000 Jews in pogroms in Latvia, Lithuania, Eastern Poland, Ukraine, and the Romanian borderlands. 157. 158. Although German forces tried to incite pogroms, their role in causing violence is controversial. 159. 160. Romanian soldiers killed tens of thousands of Jews from Odessa by April 1942. 161. 162. Prior to the invasion, the Einsatzgruppen were reorganized in preparation for mass killings and instructed to shoot Soviet officials and Jewish state and party employees. 163. The shootings were justified on the basis of Jews' supposed central role in supporting the communist system, but it was not initially envisioned to kill all Soviet Jews. 164. 165. The occupiers relied on locals to identify Jews to be targeted. 166. The first German mass killings targeted adult male Jews who had worked as civil servants or in jobs requiring education. Tens of thousands were shot by the end of July. The vast majority of civilian victims were half-naked women running, and a man carrying a bat. At least 3,000 Jews were killed during the 1941 Lviv pogroms, mainly by local Ukrainians. 154. Jews. 161. In July and August, Heinrich Himmler, the leader of the SS, Stabsstaffel, made several visits to the death squad's zones of operation, relaying orders to kill more Jews. 167. At this time, the killers began to murder Jewish women and children too. 167. 168. Executions peaked at 40,000 a month in Lithuania in August and September, and in October and November at their height in Belarus. 169. Men rounded up and walking. Original Nazi propaganda caption: too bad even for a bullet. The Jews shown here were shot at once. 28 June 1941 in Rojanka, Belarus. Men execute at least 4 Soviet civilians kneeling by the side of a mass grave. Shooting from behind became popular because killers did not have to look at their victims' faces, and they were likely to fall into the grave. 170. The executions often took place a few kilometers from a town. Victims were rounded up and marched to the execution site, forced to undress, and shot into previously dug pits. 171. The board technique was a shot in the back of the neck with a single bullet. 172. In the chaos, many victims were not killed by the gunfire but instead buried alive. Typically, the pits would be guarded after the execution, but sometimes a few victims managed to escape afterwards. 171. Executions were public spectacles, and the victims' property was looted both by the occupiers and local inhabitants. 173. Around 200 ghettos were established in the occupied Soviet Union, with many existing only briefly before their inhabitants were executed. A few large ghettos such as Vilna, Kovno, Riga, Bialystok, and Bau lasted into 1943 because they became centers of production. 119. Victims of mass shootings included Jews deported from Mongolia. 174. Besides Germany, Romania killed the largest number of Jews. 175. 176. Romania deported about 154,170,000 Jews from Bessarabia and Bukovina to ghettos in Transnistria from 1941 to 1943. 177. Jews from Transnistria were also imprisoned in these ghettos, where the total death toll may have reached 160,000.178. Hungary expelled thousands of Carpathian, Ruthenian and foreign Jews in 1941, who were shortly thereafter shot in Ukraine. 179, 180. At the beginning of September, all German Jews were required to wear a yellow star, and in October Hitler decided to deport them to the east and ban emigration. 181, 182. Between mid-October and the end of 1941, 42,000 Jews from Germany and its annexed territories and 5,000 Romani people from Austria were deported to Lodz, Kovno, Riga, and Minsk. 183, 184. In late November, 5,000 German Jews were shot outside of Kovno and another 1,000 near Riga. But Himmler ordered an end to such massacres, and some senior Nazi leadership voiced doubts about killing German Jews. 174, 185. Executions of German Jews in the Baltics resumed in early 1942. 186. After the expansion of killings to target the entire Soviet Jewish population, the 3,000 men of the Einsatzgruppen proved insufficient, and Himmler mobilized 21 battalions of order police to assist in. 167. In addition, Wehrmacht soldiers, Waffen-SS brigades, and local auxiliaries shot many Jews. 171, 187, 188. By the end of 1941, more than 80% of the Jews in central Ukraine, eastern Belarus, Russia, Latvia, and Lithuania had been shot, but less than 25% of those living farther west, where 900,000 remained alive. 189. By the end of the war, around 1.5 to 2 million Jews were shot, 155. And as many as 225,000 Roma, 190. The murderers found the executions distressing and logistically inconvenient, which influenced the decision to switch to other methods of killing. 191. Systematic deportations across Europe. Most historians agree that Hitler issued an explicit order to kill all Jews across Europe. 192. But there is disagreement when. 193, 194. Some historians cite inflammatory statements by Hitler and other Nazi leaders, as well as the concurrent mass shootings of Serbian Jews, plans for extermination camps in Poland, and the beginning of the deportation of German Jews as indicative of the final decision having been made before December 1941. 193, 195. Others argue that these policies were initiatives by local leaders and that the final decision was made later. 193. On the 5th of December, 1941, the Soviet Union launched its first major counteroffensive. On the 11th of December, Hitler declared war on the United States after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. 196, 197. The next day, he told leading Nazi Party officials, referring to his 1939 prophecy, "The old war is here. The annihilation of the Jews must be the necessary consequence." 197, 198. It took the Nazis several months after this to organize a continent-wide genocide. 197. Reinhard Heydrich, head of the Reich Main Security Office, RSHA, convened the 1C conference on the 20th of January 1942. This high-level meeting was intended to coordinate anti-Jewish policy. 199. The majority of Holocaust killings were carried out in 1942, with 20 or 25% of Holocaust victims dying before early 1942 and the same number surviving by the end of the year. 200, 201. Extermination camps. Deportation to Chelmsford gas vans developed from those used to kill mental patients since 1939 were assigned to the Einsatzgruppen and first used in November 1941. Victims were forced into the van and killed with engine exhaust. 202. The first extermination camp was Chelmo in Swarthland, established on the initiative of the local civil administrator Arthur Grezer with Himmler's approval. It began operations in December 1941 using gas vans. 203, 204, 205. In October 1941, higher SS and police leader of Lublin Odiloglovnik, 206, began work planning Belzec, the first purpose-built extermination camp to feature stationary gas chambers using carbon monoxide based on the previous Action T4 program. 207, 208. Amid increasing talk among German administrators in Poland of large-scale murder of Jews in the general governorate. 209, 203. In late 1941 in East Upper Silesia, Jews in forced labor camps operated with Schmelt organization deemed unfit for work began to be sent in groups to Auschwitz, where they were murdered. 210, 211. In early 1942, Zyklon B became the preferred killing method in extermination camps. 212. After gassing experiments were conducted on Russian POWs in late August 1941. 213, 208. The camps were located on rail lines to make it easier to transport Jews to their deaths, but in remote places to avoid notice. 206. The stench caused by mass killing operations was noticeable to anyone nearby. 214. Except in the deportations from Western and Central Europe, people were typically deported to the camps in overcrowded cattle cars. As many as 150 people were forced into a single boxcar. Many died en route partly because of the low priority accorded to these transports. 215, 216. Shortage of rail transport sometimes led to postponement or cancellation of deportations. 217. Upon arrival, the victims were robbed of their remaining possessions, forced to undress, had their hair cut, and were chased into the gas chamber. 218. Death from the gas was agonizing and could take as long as 30 minutes. 219, 197. The gas chambers were primitive and sometimes malfunctioned. Some prisoners were shot because the gas chambers were not functioning. 220. At other extermination camps, nearly everyone on a transport was killed on arrival, but at Auschwitz around 20 to 25% were separated out for labor. 221. Although many of these prisoners died later on. 222. Through starvation, mass shooting, torture. 223. And medical experiments. 3. Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka reported a combined revenue of Rm 178.7 million from belongings stolen from their victims, far exceeding costs. 224, 225. Combined, the camps required the labor of less than 3,000 Jewish prisoners, 1,000 Chorniki men, largely Ukrainian auxiliaries, and very few German Bois. 226, 216. About half of the Jews killed in the Holocaust died by poison gas. 227. Thousands of Romani people were also murdered in the extermination camps. 228. Prisoner uprisings at Treblinka and Sobibor meant that these camps were shut down earlier than envisioned. 229, 230. Major extermination camps. 231. Camp location number of Jews killed. Killing technology planning began mass gassing duration Chelmsford. 231. 150,000, 231, gas vans, 231, July 1941, 231, 8 December 1941, April 1943 and April-July 1944, 232, Belzer Clublin District, 231, 440,823,596,200, 233, stationary gascomber, engine exhaust, 231, October 1941,